writes, quote, desperate to protect his obedient GOP majority's lock on Congress and anxious that many GOP will lose, Trump directed Governor Abbott to find 3 to 5 new Texas Congress members through more crooked gerrymandering. It is the latest power grab that citizens must rise up and resist. Well, joining us now live from Austin, Texas, is Representative Lloyd Doggett. And I wonder if we can just start with you explaining quite what you meant there.
On that post, we're about to have Trump-directed gerrymandering in Texas. Republicans already have more representation out of Texas than they deserve, but he's going to try to come in with AI and draw very narrow districts to add to his majority in the House, because he's desperate, recognizing that with all the bad votes they've cast, he's about to lose control of the House. That would give us, as Democrats, the power to subpoena, the power to affect appropriations, the power to push back against Trump's drive to tyranny.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining that. Let's talk about Trump's trip to the U.S. state of Texas today. He is there to observe the damage from these catastrophic floods, to meet survivors and to talk to officials. You said recently, and I quote you, I've been sounding the alarm about the danger to Central Texans from the Trump staffing cuts and hiring freeze at the National Weather Service and NOAA. Look, the White House has pushed back hard on suggestions, sir, that its policies weaken the government's defenses against such disaster threats. The White House press secretary said in response, quote, many Democrat-elected officials are trying to turn this into a political game, and it is not, she said earlier this week. This is a national tragedy. How do you respond to a suggestion that you and others are turning this into a political game? It's not, says the White House.
Well, first, it is a national tragedy. In this day and time, with the technology we have, to lose hundreds of people, including many children, to a flood is totally unacceptable. The failure was not only at the federal level, it was with Republican government at the local level and at the state level as well. And no one wants to accept accountability. To have the Trump administration talk about politically exploiting a tragedy is almost a joke. How short the memory of when he was interfering and making false conspiracy claims in North Carolina on flooding there in the past. I've called for an investigation. I've called for some accountability, because I think the cutbacks at the National Weather Service, at the Federal Emergency Management Administration, are cutbacks that had a direct effect on this. The night of this tragedy, the first flood warning came to people at 1:14 in the morning. The emergency declaration came at 4:03 when cabins were already floating down the river. I have concerns that the meteorologist who was responsible for working with local entities had been retired by the Trump administration, that a hydrologist who's responsible for rainfall and rain absorption was not there. So it's those absences plus the delays of the FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Administration, that really had a negative impact.
You have been very critical of Governor Greg Abbott, who, when asked who was to blame for the deadly flooding at a news conference yesterday, said, and I quote, every football team makes mistakes. The losing teams are the ones that try to point out who's to blame. The way winners talk is not to point fingers. They talk about solutions. What Texas is about is solutions. I mean, you were very critical. You said this isn't a game. People's lives are at stake, and the losers are the ones that don't learn from mistakes, that don't hold people accountable. In this case, I think there are accountability issues at every level of government. Can you just explain further?
Sure. I think that last part is the key point, because if we don't lose from our mistakes, just as a sports team has to learn from its mistakes for the next season, if we don't make those mistakes again, if we fail to recognize and we make the same mistakes again, then the next hurricane, the next tornado, the next firestorm will lead to many lives being lost unnecessarily, just as happened here in Texas. This administration doesn't believe in accountability on anything. You never hear the Trump administration that it has made the slightest mistake. It's always someone else's fault. In this case, there is fault to go around at every level of Republican government, from the county to the state to the federal level. And what we need to be looking at is not blame, but accountability, and how it is you learn from the mistakes and ensure they don't happen again. I think these terrible cutbacks that have been made that by the Trump administration, all against the background of his continued climate denial and failure to recognize that the climate is changing so rapidly around the world that we have weather intensification, much heavier rainfall occurring here. All those things Trump has failed to do and refuses to be held accountable. He's coming to Texas too late with too little.